There is only 1 month left until the wedding. Outside the window of my Manhattan apartment, cold rain was beating against the floor, to ceiling glass, just like my damp and gloomy mood at this moment. Sean stood across from me, wearing his signature dark gray cashmere sweater, gold-rimmed glasses perched on his tall nose bridge, his whole being exuding that calm and precision unique to neurosurgeons. It was this appearance combined with that elite aura as if he could control life and death that made me chase him like a fool for 6 whole years, loving him for 6 years. But at this moment the words coming out of his mouth were even more bone, chillingly cold than the rain outside. "Tiffany, this is just an IVF procedure. It doesn't even require any actual intercourse. Do you really need to be this hysterical?" His tone carried a hint of weariness at my being unreasonable, as if what we were discussing wasn't him creating a child with another woman through medical means, but whether to have steak or pasta for dinner. Just a procedure. I felt like there was a ball of ice, soaked cotton stuffed in my throat, every word trembling with pain. "Sean, you are going to donate sperm to Ariel and even sign a co-parenting agreement. This means you are going to become that child's father. On the eve of our wedding, you are telling me you are going to be someone else's dad." Sean furrowed his brow, that familiar condescending expression appearing again. "You know Ariel's situation. The professor just passed away. Her depression relapsed. She has tried to kill herself several times. This was the professor's dying wish. He hoped Ariel could have something to hold on to, and also hoped this genius gene could be passed on. Ariel only trusts me, with her current mental state. No one else can help her but me. So you are offering yourself up as the miracle cure." I couldn't help but sneer, my nails digging deep into my palm. "Did all the sperm banks in the world explode? It has to be yours." "Because that is the professor's bloodline. Ariel doesn't want to just find some random stranger. She needs security." Sean raised his voice, clearly losing patience. "Besides, I am just providing a biological sample and a nominal father role, helping her raise the child. You are my lover, you are my wife. There is no conflict. Tiffany, can't you be a little more understanding? This is saving someone, not cheating." Understanding. That word hit me like a slap across the face. Over the past 6 years, to fit into his so-called elite circle, I'd reined in my fiery Texas girl temper, learned to wear minimalist black, white, and gray outfits, learned to appreciate those tart red wines, learned to be a well-behaved and sensible accessory when he worked overtime. I thought this was love, but now I see. He was just domesticating a pet to his liking. And now he is asking me to graciously accept him having a child with his childhood sweetheart. Ariel, that woman who is forever fragile, forever teary-eyed, forever falling ill at critical moments, needing Sean to rescue her. She used her father's death to weave a massive web of moral obligation, trapping the conceited Sean firmly within it. Sean is a genius, but he has an incurable God complex. He enjoys being needed by Ariel, enjoys that sense of superiority that only he can save that pitiful woman. What if I say no? I stared into his eyes, trying one last time to find how much I mattered in his heart. Sean sighed, wearing that helpless expression reserved for stubborn patients. "Tiffany, the procedure is already scheduled. I am here to inform you, not to ask for your permission. Ariel is at the hospital right now, emotionally unstable, and I have to go be with her. Calm down. Don't let jealousy ruin our wedding." With that, he glanced at his watch, grabbed his car keys, and turned to walk toward the entrance. At that moment, I heard the sound of something collapsing inside me. Not a dramatic crash, but a crisp snap, like a string that had been pulled taut for 6 years had finally broken. All the love, all the grievances, all the expectations. The second he turned away, they all turned to ashes. I watched his upright figure from behind, that same figure I had gazed at countless times at the end of hospital corridors, and suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity and disgust. "Sean." I called out to stop him. His hand rested on the door handle, not turning back. "If you want to make a scene, wait until I get back. Don't bother coming back." My voice was surprisingly calm, so calm that even I was surprised. Since you want to be a father so badly, then go, we're done. Sean's figure paused for a moment, then let out a scoff. Don't say things out of anger. You know you can't leave me. Once you've calmed down at home, I'll come back to have dinner with you. The door slammed shut with a bang. The room returned to a deathly silence. I stood in place, staring at that tightly closed door, tears finally falling uncontrollably. But I didn't let myself cry for too long, maybe just 10 seconds. 10 seconds later, I raised my hand and fiercely wiped away the tears on my face. The Tiffany who had been barely surviving in New York was dead. What came alive now was the Tiffany who rode horses and drank on the Texas ranch, who loved and hated boldly. Since he thought I couldn't leave him, since he thought I was easy to push around, then let me show him what real generosity means. I took out my phone, opened Instagram, and snapped a photo of that glittering yet ironic engagement diamond ring. No filter, no edits, just the empty, cold luxury apartment in the background. Edit send. The text on the story was simple and brutal, the bold font radiating my resolve, wedding still on. Groom absent. One vacancy available, urgent sale, first come first served. After posting that update, I threw my phone directly onto the couch, turned around and walked into the walk-in closet, and dragged out that old suitcase covered in stickers that I'd kept buried away for ages. Once to establish myself in this city, to be worthy of his title as the rising star of neurosurgery. I hid away all my bright colors. Now I am going to get them all back. I started packing like crazy, not organizing, ransacking. Everything Sean bought me, anything that carried his scent. I threw it all into trash bags. Those minimalist dresses I bought to match his aesthetic, shredded. Those heels that gave me blisters, tossed. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone screen lit up, buzzing like crazy. I thought it was Sean seeing the post and coming to confront me. But when I walked over to check, it was a familiar name I hadn't been in contact with for ages. Elliot, that nemesis from high school who always pulled my braids and mocked my outfits for being tacky, yet took me racing to watch the stars when I got stood up at prom. That tech mogul now making waves in Austin, just a short DM reply with his usual arrogance and cockiness. On my way. Then came a second one. Send me your location. My private jet will land at Kennedy Airport in half an hour. Don't let any bastard get near you again. Staring at those words on the screen, my eyes that had already dried up started to burn again. I've been with Sean for 6 years. When I had a fever, he told me to take a cab to the hospital by myself. When I was writhing in pain from my period, he was operating on patients. Not even a single word of comfort. He is always busy, always rational, always keeping me and his career, his responsibilities, perfectly separate. But Elliot, that bad boy I thought had long forgotten me, came rushing across half of America the second I sent out a signal. The doorbell suddenly rang. Me heart skipped a beat, thinking Sean had come back. But through the peephole, it was the apartment doorman, holding a large bouquet of vibrant, dewy red roses. That passionate red looked out of place in the dim hallway, yet full of life. Miss Tiffany, a gentleman just called for an urgent delivery from the flower shop downstairs, said it is to calm your nerves. I took the flowers. On the card was a line written in bold, flamboyant strokes, unsigned. But the tone was unmistakable. Don't know which blind fool upset you, but red suits you better. Wait for me. I held that prickly bouquet of roses, took a deep breath, and a long mist freshness filled my lungs. I took off the expensive diamond ring Sean gave me, the one symbolizing so-called commitment, and casually tossed it onto the shoe cabinet, in the entryway with a crisp clink. To hell with his mentor's dying wish. To hell with joint custody. This one, woman show. I am done playing it. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang urgently again. I had just zipped up my suitcase when my heartbeat skipped a beat with the ringing. Opening the door, a cold wind mixed with rain and tobacco hit me in the face, followed immediately by a tall figure blocking the light from the hallway. Elliot stood in the doorway, his well-tailored leather jacket still dotted with water droplets. He had clearly sprinted all the way here. A few strands of his signature messy hair were dampened by the rain, clinging to his forehead, yet he didn't look disheveled at all. Instead, it made those deep brown eyes of his shine even more strikingly, like two clusters of fire burning in the dark night. "Hi, sweetheart." He was catching his breath, but the corner of his lips curved into that familiar, devil may care smile I knew so well. "I heard you are selling off grooms. I came with everything I've got to bid." In that instant, all the repression, grievances, and feigned strength I had accumulated over the past 6 years in New York crumbled completely at his flippant teasing. Before I could even think, my body had already reacted ahead of my mind, throwing myself into that damp, yet incredibly broad and warm embrace. Elliot obviously froze for a moment, then his arms tightened, with such force as if he wanted to crush me into his flesh and blood. That reassuring scent of cedarwood and leather mixed on him instantly dispelled the cold antiseptic smell Sean had left in this room. "What is wrong?" His voice lowered. A rare display of tenderness, even with a hint of an almost imperceptible tremor. "Did that bastard with the scalpel bully you?" I buried myself in his chest, not wanting him to see my tear-streaked face, could only nod with a muffled sound. Yet my tears stubbornly smeared his expensive leather jacket into a complete mess. He is going to do IVF with another woman to have a child," I sobbed, my voice broken and intermittent, "to repay a debt of gratitude for those damn genius genes." I felt the body holding me instantly stiffen, followed by a bone-chilling coldness bursting from him. Elliot let go of me, cupped my face with both hands, his thumbs roughly yet gently wiping away my tears, his gaze terrifyingly sinister. "Good, very good," he said through gritted teeth, as if smiling, yet making one shudder. "What a great doctor! A rare gem of a man like this. Really deserves to have his bloodline cut off." The murderous intent in his eyes flashed by so quickly, I thought it was an illusion. The next second he turned back into that carefree Elliot, his gaze sweeping over the lone diamond ring on the entryway shoe cabinet, letting out a scornful laugh. "This piece of crap rock thought it could tie you down?" He picked up the engagement ring I once treasured, casually tossing it up and catching it like throwing garbage, then precisely tossed it into the tall vase nearby, a clang sound like putting a sarcastic period at the end of my laughable 6 years. "Let's go. Every extra second you spend in this cursed place makes me feel wronged on your behalf." He grabbed my hand without giving me a chance to argue, his other hand taking my heavy suitcase so naturally, as if it wasn't packed with all my belongings, but just a ball of cotton where to. I was a bit lost. For the past 6 years, my life had only 2 points on a line: home and the hospital where Sean worked. Suddenly cut off from all of this, I actually didn't know where to go. Home. Elliot looked back at me, his eyes firm and burning. "Back to Texas. The sunshine there is 10,000 times better than here. If Grandpa Joe knew you've been wronged like this, he would have polished his shotgun long ago. Texas. That place filled with sunshine, the smell of barbecue, and hearty laughter. That was my roots, and also the place I cut off with my own hands for the sake of so-called love." A soft spot somewhere in my heart was deeply touched. I sniffled and nodded hard. "Okay, let's go home." We didn't get away that smoothly. Just as we were dragging the suitcase out of the elevator, we ran right into Sean, who had just returned from the hospital. He looked somewhat tired, still holding an exquisite takeout paper bag in his hand. It was packaging from Ariel's favorite Japanese restaurant, the same one I had mentioned wanting to try but was rejected countless times by him, with raw food is unhealthy. Our eyes met. The air froze for a few seconds. Sean's gaze first landed on my hand tightly held by Elliot, then shifted to the suitcase beside us, and finally fixed on Elliot's provocative face. His brows instantly knotted into a dead knot, and his usual calm composure finally cracked open. "Tiffany, what the hell are you doing?" His voice was pressed low, carrying obvious anger. "Who is this man? Where are you taking this hick?" Hick, this was the derogatory term he'd always used for uneducated nouveau riche like Elliot, even though Elliot's net worth now was probably higher than the entire neurosurgery team combined. Arrogance etched into his very bones. Before I could speak, Elliot was already laughing. Not only did he not let go of my hand, He instead interlaced our fingers and deliberately waved them in front of Sean's face. "Dr. Caldwell, I've heard so much about you." Elliot's voice was lazy, yet carried a ruthless edge. "I am this silly girl's groom candidate #1. By the way, let me correct you. I am now the country bumpkin of Austin Tech Park, but buying this building of yours should still be more than enough within my means." Sean's face darkened instantly. He ignored Elliot and stared fixedly at me. "Tiffany, stop being stubborn." Ariel's emotions just stabilized. "I don't want to fight with you. Come home with me. Don't let outsiders see us as a joke." Ariel again, and that tone again, like I am being unreasonable. Looking at his matter-of-fact expression, the last trace of lingering pain in my heart completely disappeared, leaving only deep exhaustion and disgust. "Sean, do you not understand human speech?" I looked straight at him, my tone terrifyingly calm. "I made it very clear on IG. The groom has been replaced. Since you have your Ariel and child, stop coming here to disgust me. It is just co-parenting, I've said it many times." Sean finally lost control and growled, drawing sidelong glances from others in the apartment lobby. "I only have responsibility toward Ariel. Why can't you just understand my difficulties? Those are your difficulties, not mine." I coldly cut him off. "Your sense of responsibility is so great that you can sacrifice your fiancé to fulfill someone else's family dream. Too bad, I am done playing along." After saying that, I tugged at Elliot's hand. "Let's go. I don't want to breathe the air here anymore." Elliot looked down and smiled at me, the doting in that smile almost overflowing. "As you wish, my dear wife." This wife was called out so naturally and so loudly. Sean stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning, his face full of disbelief. It wasn't until we brushed past him that he suddenly reached out to grab my arm. "Tiffany, just try to leave." Before his hand could touch me, it was firmly caught by a more powerful hand. The smile on Elliot's face instantly vanished, replaced by a chilling ferocity. "Don't touch her!" Elliot's voice seemed to squeeze out through clenched teeth, carrying a warning. "Your hands are for holding a scalpel. If they're ruined, I am afraid you won't even qualify to be a cheap daddy to your precious child." After saying that, he forcefully flung Sean's hand away, wrapped his arm around me, and strode out of the apartment building. The downpour had just stopped, and the neon lights of New York streets were reflected in the puddles, bizarre and dazzling. Sitting in Elliot's incredibly flashy black SUV, I watched the apartment building gradually shrink in the rearview mirror and let out a long, heavy breath. "Feel good?" Elliot started the car, while tilting his head to look at me, his eyes full of amusement. "Yeah?" I nodded honestly, "but it is also pretty ridiculous." "It is not funny." He reached out a hand and gently ruffled my hair. "It is never too late to cut your losses. From now on, you are mine. No use regretting it. Texas's return window is already closed." I looked at his profile as he focused on driving, and that empty hole in my heart seemed to be filling up little by little. "Elliot, thank you for coming, fool." He gave a soft snort, and the car shot onto the highway like an arrow leaving the bow, heading toward the airport, heading toward that sun-filled south. I've waited 18 years for this moment. At that moment, I suddenly felt that perhaps this time, I really made the right bet. But I didn't know then that Sean's nightmare had only just begun, and that so-called joint custody would become an all-consuming abyss. When the plane landed smoothly at the airport, I even had the illusion of traveling through time and space. New York's cold dampness still seemed to linger in my bones, but here, the brilliantly brazen sunshine was already pouring through the cabin window onto me. The air was filled with the scent of dry earth and the smoky aroma of distant barbecue, that uniquely Texan, comforting smell. "Welcome home, cowgirl." Elliot took off his sunglasses, and those eyes were so bright under the sunlight, as if they held an entire summer. He reached out his hand to me, his palm broad and solid, fingertips bearing thin calluses from years of coding, yet more reassuring than any surgeon's hands. I took his hand, and that grounded feeling spread from my fingertips all the way to my heart. Elliot didn't take me back to his penthouse in the city center, but drove straight toward the outskirts. It was a massive family ranch, and the place where I grew up, Grandpa's Joe Ranch. Before the car had even come to a complete stop, I saw an old man with a full head of silver hair, yet still powerfully built, standing on the porch leaning on a shotgun, looking as if he was ready to shoot any fool who dared to cross him. "Grandpa." I pushed open the car door and jumped out, running toward him like I did when I was little. Joe tossed aside his shotgun and caught me in his arms, his rough hands patting my back, his voice booming yet with a hint of choking up. "My little Tiffany, you finally remembered to come back. I thought that dump New York had stolen your soul." "I am sorry, Grandpa. I cut the crap. It is good that you are back." Joe cut off my apology, then turned to glare at Elliot, who was just unloading the luggage from the car. "And you, brat, why so slow? Is the tomahawk steak I asked for ready? If you don't fatten this girl up by a couple pounds tonight, don't even think about coming inside." Elliot smiled and held up the cooler in his hand. "Don't worry, Joe, there is plenty for tonight." And he deliberately paused, his gaze sweeping over me meaningfully. "I've already chased off that so-called doctor. Now I am the #1 candidate. Shouldn't you put that shotgun away?" Joe snorted, but couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. "We'll see how you do. If you dare make my granddaughter shed a single tear, I'll hang you on the bullhorns to dry." That night, the bonfire at the ranch burned well into the night. No fancy French cuisine, no pretentiously held wine glasses, just big chunks of sizzling, greasy barbecue, ice-cold beer, and Joe's hearty laughter. Elliot sat beside me, shielding me from every spark that flew up, and carefully trimming off every burnt edge from my steak. Looking at his focused profile illuminated by the firelight, I suddenly felt, this is what life should be like. Not carefully trying to please, not anxiously waiting in fear of loss, but this kind of passionate, direct, unreserved affection. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in New York, Sean wasn't having such a good time. After I left that day, Sean didn't calm down, like he said he would. He was certain I was just throwing a tantrum. After all, how could 6 years of relationship just end like that? He was even messaging my friends, his tone full of that nauseating confidence. "Tiffany hasn't been in a good mood lately, and went back home to clear her head. I hope you can bear with us a bit. Once things stabilize with Ariel, I'll go pick her up." However, reality slapped him hard across the face. All his messages sank like stones into the sea. My friends seemed to have agreed among themselves, either leaving him on red or just blocking him outright. Even his colleagues at the hospital started looking at him with somewhat subtle expressions. What really made him start to panic was one of Ariel's prenatal checkups. That day, Ariel called him clutching her belly, her face pale, saying her stomach hurt terribly. Without a second word, Sean pushed back an important surgery scheduled for the afternoon and rushed frantically to the obstetrics department. The examination results showed the fetus was developing well. It was just false contractions caused by Ariel being too emotionally tense. Sean breathed a sigh of relief and was about to say a few comforting words when he inadvertently spotted a familiar figure at the end of the corridor. It was Ariel's ex-boyfriend, a notorious good-for-nothing punk. Why was he here? A flicker of doubt crossed Sean's mind, but before he could think it through, Ariel had already weakly leaned against him, eyes brimming with tears as she clutched his sleeve. "Sean, thank goodness you are here. Without you, I wouldn't know how to keep this baby. This is Dad's only hope." Looking at that face so similar to his mentor's, the doubt in Sean's heart was instantly crushed by guilt. He helped Ariel sit down, patiently pouring water for her and draping clothes over her shoulders. His gentle and considerate demeanor made him look like a perfect dad to be. Just then, a commotion suddenly erupted from the hospital lobby. "A life for a life, that quack killed my wife. You all have to pay with your lives." A burly man with a brutish face was waving a gleaming fruit knife, charging into the crowd like a madman. Nurses and patients around screamed and scattered in all directions, the scene spiraling out of control in an instant. As a doctor, Sean instinctively wanted to step forward and intervene. But before he could move, Ariel suddenly let out a scream and clung tightly to his waist. "Sean, don't go! I am scared, save me and the baby." The knife-wielding man had obviously gone berserk. Seeing Sean in his white coat, he immediately changed direction and charged over with a roar. "Doctor, you are all in this together. Die!" In the instant the cold glint flashed, Sean's mind went completely blank. Driven by extreme fear and instinct, he made a move no one expected. He shoved backward hard, trying to push Ariel in his arms to safety. However, the push was too hasty and too forceful. He didn't push Ariel away. Instead, he shoved another girl who happened to be passing by and wanted to help break up the fight, hard into the knife-wielding attacker. A squelch sound. The sound of the blade sinking into flesh was especially clear amid the chaotic screams. The innocent girl stumbled a few steps from the impact, ending up right in front of the attacker's blade. Blood instantly dyed her white dress red. She clutched her abdomen and collapsed, looking at Sean in disbelief. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. Sean stood frozen in place, still in the posture of pushing someone, watching the girl lying in the pool of blood, his pupils contracting violently. That girl had the same golden brown long hair as me, and her silhouette looked just like mine. In that split second of confusion just now, did he mistake her for me? Murder. Murder. Security finally rushed over and pinned the attacker to the ground. Sean tried to step forward to give first aid with trembling hands, but was stopped by the arriving police. He watched helplessly as the girl was lifted onto a stretcher, looking at all the blood on the ground, with only one thought in his mind: if that girl just now had been Tiffany. If by chance I hadn't left New York that day, but had come to the hospital to find him, then would the one lying in the pool of blood right now be me? This thought made Sean feel like he'd plunged into an icy abyss. He'd always believed he was protecting the weaker Ariel, fulfilling his promise to his mentor. But only at this moment, with real bloodshed laid bare before him, did he realize in horror that in his subconscious hierarchy, for the sake of that so-called responsibility, he could sacrifice others without a second thought. Even sacrifice me. "Sean, I am so scared." Ariel huddled in his arms, trembling, looking utterly pitiful. But this time Sean didn't rush to comfort her like he usually would. He stared blankly at his hands, those hands praised as the hands of God, now stained with a bit of splattered blood. It was that innocent girl's blood. He suddenly felt a wave of nausea. "You, as long as you are okay." He forced out a few words, his voice hoarse and dry, pushed Ariel away, and stumbled toward the bathroom, retching frantically over the sink. The man in the mirror was deathly pale, his eyes unfocused. Where was any trace of the composed elite doctor? Now, and it was at this very moment that he finally realized, some things, once shattered, could never be pieced back together again. Meanwhile, at the farm in Texas, I was riding a quarter horse named Lightning, galloping freely across the pasture under the setting sun. The wind whistled past my ears, carrying away all the worries and gloom. Elliot rode another horse close behind, his laughter hearty and bold. "Tiffany, if you catch up to me, I'll let you be on top tonight." "Get lost." I laughed loudly while waving the reins, but couldn't help blushing. The phone in my pocket buzzed once. It was a text from a friend in New York, with a news screenshot attached. A vicious medical disturbance occurred at a New York hospital. A neurosurgeon accidentally pushed a passerby to block a knife while protecting a pregnant woman, causing serious injury to the passerby. Although the news was blurred out, I recognized at a glance that it was the hospital where Sean worked, and that blurry figure in a white coat. The last ripple of emotion in my heart completely subsided. Not hatred nor resentment, but complete indifference, as if watching the farce of a stranger who had nothing to do with me. I turned off the phone, didn't reply, and didn't take a second look. Elliot ahead turned to look at me and shouted loudly, "What is wrong? Are you tired? No?" I squeezed my legs against the horse's belly, shouting back into the wind, "Elliot, let's get married right here next month." On the horse ahead, the man suddenly yanked the reins, and that tall steed reared up on its hind legs, letting out a neigh. Elliot turned his horse around and rushed back, his expression one of unprecedented wild joy and solemnity. "Are you sure, Tiffany? If you say yes this time, there really won't be any chance to back out. Even if knives rain from the sky, you'll have to marry me." "I will never back out." I looked into his eyes, enunciating each word. "Unless you don't dare to marry me. I'd even give you my life, and you think I wouldn't dare marry you?" Elliot swung off his horse, rushed over in a few steps, and lifted me down from the horseback, and right there between the vast blue sky and grassland, kissed me fiercely. The setting sun stretched our shadows very long, very long. The gloom of New York would eventually be dispelled by the sunshine of Texas. And Sean, the name that once occupied my entire youth, finally stayed completely in that cold, rainy season, never able to catch up again. Sean's life was slipping out of control bit by bit. Since that hospital violence incident, although he didn't bear direct legal responsibility, the gossip within the hospital and the pressure from public opinion forced him to be temporarily suspended. The innocent girl who got hurt was still under observation in the ICU, and each day's medical bills were like death warrants one after another. Although Ariel cried saying it was to save her and the baby, the one actually paying to fill the hole was still Sean. He began to become anxious and irritable. That once calm and composed master neurosurgeon now lost his temper at Ariel in the apartment at the slightest provocation. "Can't you go to the prenatal checkup by yourself? Don't you know I've been suspended?" Ariel curled up on the sofa feeling wronged, holding an ultrasound report in her hand, tears coming at will. "But Sean, this is Dad's grandchild. Without you, how could I dare to go to a place full of strangers all by myself? Dad again, that damn moral blackmail again." Sean took a deep breath, forcing down the anger in his chest, but he no longer had the unconditional patience he used to have. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him, just wanting to find somewhere with no one around to get some air. Without realizing it, he drove to a coffee shop under the Brooklyn Bridge that we used to love. Every weekend I used to drag him here, order a latte, and then watch him read like a love-sick fool for the whole afternoon. Back then, I thought that was happiness. But now looking back, it was just a one-woman show. That familiar jazz song was playing in the coffee shop. Sean had just sat down when his phone rang. It was an unfamiliar FedEx number. "Mr. Caldwell, you have an express package that requires your signature in person." Half an hour later, Sean returned to the car holding that heavy, beautifully packaged envelope. The envelope was made of that expensive pearlescent paper with subtle watermarks, with no sender's address on it, only his name written in calligraphy. He opened the envelope. A gold-embossed invitation slid out, its bright red background looking particularly glaring in the dim car interior. The cover of the invitation is a photo. The background shows Texas's iconic blue sky with white clouds and vast ranches. Two figures are snuggling under a huge oak tree. The man is wearing jeans and a white shirt, smiling brightly. The woman is wearing that floral dress I love most, her profile so gentle it seems to glow. It is Elliot. And me. Sean's hand suddenly trembled violently, and the invitation nearly fell to the ground. He stared fixedly at the woman in the photo, smiling without a trace of gloom. A Tiffany so relaxed and happy, one he had never seen in his memory. Opening the invitation, the words on the inner page were like blades, each character stabbing into his heart. "We cordially invite you to attend the wedding of Mr. Elliot Harrison and Miss Tiffany Bennett. Date, X month, X day, 2023. Venue, Joe Ranch, Austin, Texas." Below that was another line of small, handwritten text with a flamboyant and arrogant handwriting. It was clearly written by that bastard Elliot. "Thanks for not marrying her, letting me pick up a priceless treasure. Remember to send a gift, doesn't have to be much. Just send along that pathetic self-esteem of yours, bang." Sean slammed his fist hard on the steering wheel, his knuckles instantly turning white. Getting married. How is that possible? How long has it been since they separated? Less than 4 months. How could she really be marrying that hick, who has got nothing but money? "Fake, it must be fake," he muttered to himself, as if trying to convince himself. "She is just trying to piss me off. She is forcing me to bow down. Tiffany loved me for 6 years. She couldn't possibly fall for someone else this fast. He frantically pulled out his phone like a madman, dialing the number he had called countless times but could never get through. "Sorry, the number you dialed is busy." Blocked again. He switched to a different number and called my bestie Sophie. This time the call went through. "Oh my, isn't this the great philanthropist Dr. Caldwell?" Sophie's voice was dripping with sarcasm. "What, looking for someone to be the stepmom for your co-parenting kid again? Sophie, what is the deal with that invitation?" Sean's voice was terribly hoarse. "Where is Tiffany? Let her answer the phone." "An invitation." "Oh, you mean that wedding invitation?" Sophie laughed loudly. "Of course it is real. My plane tickets are already booked first class, and Elliot is paying for it. I have to say, it is really hard to find a handsome, wealthy, and faithful husband these days. Tiffany is so lucky she cut her losses in time and found true love around the corner." "Impossible, she loves me," Sean roared. "That is just a show she is putting on to piss me off. Acting, ha." Sophie sounded like she'd heard the biggest joke ever. "Sean, have you done so many surgeries that you fried your brain?" Her wedding dress is custom Vera Wang. Her wedding ring is a one-of-a-kind Harry Winston, and even the ranch was just renovated. Who spends that kind of money on acting? Wake up to her, you are already past tense. Oh wait, you are past tense in the trash heap. The call was ruthlessly hung up. Sean held his phone, feeling like all the blood in his body had frozen. That Tiffany who always followed behind him, who would only smile foolishly, no matter how coldly he treated her, was really going to marry someone else. She really didn't want him anymore. An unprecedented sense of panic instantly consumed him. It wasn't the unwillingness of losing a possession, but rather that poison called regret had finally begun to take effect inside him. He remembered everything I did for him over those years. The hangover soup cooked late at night, the umbrella delivered on rainy days, the carefully prepared gifts for every anniversary that he forgot. That warmth he had taken for granted was leaving him with a resolute finality. "Number. I won't allow it," with reddened eyes. He restarted the car, floored the gas pedal, and the car shot out like a crazed beast. Go home, get passport, book flight. He was going to Texas. He was going to take her back. Even if he had to tie her up, he would drag her back to New York, back to his side. "Tiffany, you are mine. You can only be mine." Meanwhile in Texas, Joe's ranch was a scene of bustling and festive activity. For this wedding, Elliot had practically emptied half of Austin's flower shops. White roses, pink lisianthus, pale purple delphiniums. The entire ranch was decorated like a fairy tale world. I was sitting in the dressing room, having the makeup artist do the final touch-ups. The woman in the mirror wore a pristine white wedding gown, her face radiating the kind of glow that only comes from being surrounded by love. Nervous. Elliot pushed the door open and walked in, holding a cup of warm lemon water. He was wearing a well-tailored black tailcoat with a perfectly tied bow tie, looking so handsome you couldn't take your eyes off him. A little. I took the water and had a sip. After all, it is my first time getting married. And the last. He leaned down and kissed my forehead softly. "Don't worry, I've got everything. Even if the sky falls, I'll be there to hold it up. All you need to do is look pretty and say, 'I do.'" Looking at him, that last bit of unease from pre-wedding anxiety instantly vanished into thin air. Elliot. What if Sean shows up? I finally asked the question that had been swirling in my mind. I knew he'd received the invitation, and with his personality, he definitely wouldn't let this go. Elliot smiled. A smile that was somewhat cunning and somewhat ruthless. "Even better if he comes. I am actually afraid he won't show up." He rubbed his chin as if savoring something. "I've prepared a big gift for him, a gift big enough to make him remember for the rest of his life. But you don't need to worry about this dirty business. Joe and my boys have been waiting at the intersection for a while now. If he dares to set one foot on the ranch, I'll let him taste some good old Texan hospitality." He made me laugh, and I reached out to straighten his bow tie. "Just don't get anyone killed." "Don't worry, I know my limits." He took my hand and kissed it gently. "Today's our big day. Don't let someone irrelevant ruin your mood. Come on, my bride. Joe can't wait to walk you down the aisle. The church bells rang in the distance. The sunlight was just right, the breeze was gentle. I held on to Elliot's arm, walking step by step toward that door leading to happiness. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away up in the sky, a flight bound for Austin was piercing through thick clouds, carrying a man consumed by regret and madness, hurtling toward a doomed ending. The gears of fate had finally begun to spin wildly. This drama of love, betrayal, and redemption was about to reach its most brutal yet most satisfying climax under the blazing Texas sun. The weather in Texas, much like the people on this land, was passionate and full of surprises. On the day of the wedding, the originally cloudless blue sky suddenly filled with large masses of dark clouds. The air became stuffy and humid. A typical summer storm was brewing, but this didn't affect the festive atmosphere at the ranch one bit. A huge white tent had already been set up, and the long tables were covered with golden, roasted beef, delicate cupcakes, and chilled champagne. I was wearing that custom Vera Wang strapless wedding gown, the skirt embroidered with delicate lace flowers, the long veil trailing all the way to the end of the carpet. Joe wore a brand new navy blue suit today, with a pink rose pinned to his chest. Although he still leaned on that carved cane, he looked spirited and had a healthy glow on his face. "Sweetheart, ready?" Joe held out his arm for me to take, his eyes a bit misty. "If that boy ever dares to treat you badly, this grandpa will break his legs even if it costs me these old bones." "Grandpa, don't worry." I smiled and straightened his tie for him. "If Elliot dares to bully me, you won't need to lift a finger. I can handle him myself." The music started playing. It was that classic Can't Help Falling in Love. I held Joe's arm, walking step by step up the red carpet. Guests on both sides stood up to applaud, cheers and whistles rising one after another. Elliot stood at the end of the red carpet, his gaze piercing through the crowd, landing straight on me. In that moment his eyes held only me, as if the whole world had faded into the background. At the same moment, Austin Airport, Sean dragged his simple suitcase and rushed out of the terminal. Outside, the sky was already dark and gloomy, fierce winds whipping torrential rain down in sheets. He didn't have an umbrella and couldn't care less about his image. He rushed straight to the car rental counter and slapped down a black card. "Give me the fastest car you've got now." The clerk was startled by his fierce expression and handed him a car key with trembling hands. "Sir, with the weather right now, it is best not to drive too fast. There is standing water on the highway." "Shut up." Sean snatched the keys and turned to rush into the curtain of rain. He had to get there before that dam. "I do" was spoken. He had already rehearsed the scene of bursting into the wedding venue countless times in his mind. He would push open those doors, shout, "I object," then take Tiffany's hand and lead her away. He would kneel down and propose to her, tell her he was wrong, tell her she was the only one he loved, tell her that so-called co-parenting was a complete and utter mistake. She loved him so much, she would definitely forgive him, just like every time before. The black sedan roared onto the highway in the pouring rain, the wipers swinging frantically, yet still unable to clear the view ahead. Sean stared dead ahead at the road, his foot flooring the gas pedal. His phone kept buzzing. It was Ariel calling. He didn't even glance at it and hung up directly. That woman, the woman who had always held him hostage with her tears and fragility, now only filled him with disgust. If it weren't for her, if it weren't for that damn child, how would he have ended up in this mess? "Tiffany, wait for me," he muttered to himself, as if praying or as if brainwashing himself. Meanwhile, the wedding at the ranch had reached the vows. Elliot held my hand. Those eyes that always carried a teasing glint were now incredibly serious, so affectionate it could drown you. "Tiffany, I don't want to say those cliches about for richer or poorer, because I have no intention of letting you live a poor life anyway. I only promise that from today on, I will guard every smile of yours and wipe away every tear. I love you, longer and deeper than you could ever imagine." The priest smiled at me. "Miss Tiffany, do you take Mr. Elliot?" Boom, a massive thunder suddenly cracked, as if to tear the sky apart. Almost at the same time, on the highway a few kilometers away, A black sedan lost control and skidded on the slippery road due to excessive speed. Sean yanked the steering wheel hard, trying to regain control, but the massive inertia made the car like a wild horse off its reins, slamming hard into the roadside guardrail. Bang! The violent crash was masked by the thunder. The moment the airbag deployed, the tremendous impact made Sean feel like all his organs had shifted out of place. What followed was a dizzying spin as the car tumbled down the embankment, finally coming to rest upside down in the muddy grass. Excruciating pain. Heart-wrenching, gut-tearing agony shot up from both his hands. Sean wanted to move his fingers, but found he couldn't feel his hands at all. He struggled to open his eyes, and through the shattered windshield, saw those hands he'd been so proud of. The hands that had performed countless precision surgeries. Now twisted at grotesque angles, dripping with blood, white bones exposed. Aha! A shrill, agonized scream rang out in the downpour, only to be swallowed by the wind and rain in an instant. Meanwhile, in the warm tent, I looked at Elliot, and without any hesitation, firmly spoke that sacred word. I do. Elliot's eyes reddened slightly as he lowered his head and kissed me. Thunderous applause and cheers erupted around us as ribbons and petals rained down from above. Just then, Elliot's assistant hurried in and leaned close to his ear, whispering something. Elliot's gaze shifted slightly, then returned to normal. He wrapped his arm around my waist and whispered in my ear, "Darling, our special guest didn't make it to the ceremony. I heard he had a little accident on the highway and has already been sent to the hospital." A little accident? Looking at that cold smirk in his eyes, I pretty much got the picture. "Is it serious?" I asked, my tone as flat as if I were asking about today's weather. "Not too sure," Elliot shrugged. "But I heard his hands got hurt. For a surgeon, that is probably worse than death." His hands. Those hands that once created miracles on the operating table, yet also coldly pushed me away when I had a fever. Those hands that shoved me toward thugs for another woman. Is this karma? I didn't feel the slightest sympathy, only a fatalistic sense of absurdity. "Let's go." I lifted my skirt hem. "The toasting hasn't started yet. Don't let some nobody hold up everyone's drinking." That night, Sean spent the longest, most desperate night of his life in the hospital emergency room. When he woke up from anesthesia, the first person he saw wasn't Ariel nor me, but his attending physician, his classmate from medical school. His classmate looked at him with eyes full of sympathy and regret. "Sean, I am so sorry. Your hands suffered comminuted fractures, plus severe nerve damage. Although we did our best to save your hands, from now on, I am afraid you'll never be able to hold a scalpel again." This sentence was like a heavy hammer, ruthlessly shattering Sean's last pride. Can't hold a scalpel? Then is he still that highly revered neurosurgery genius? Is he still that high and mighty Dr. Caldwell? Impossible. He tried to raise his hand, but only felt excruciating pain and weakness. "You are lying to me. I am a genius. How could my hands be ruined?" "Calm down, Sean." His classmate held him down. "You need to rest now." Just then, the door to the ward was pushed open. An unexpected person walked in. It wasn't Ariel. Ariel was currently busy at that New York hospital, fighting with the doctors over the child. The one who came in was Elliot. He was still wearing that tailcoat, just with his bow tie loosened, looking somewhat lazy and casual. He was still holding a glass of champagne, as if he had just slipped out from the wedding party. "Yo, awake?" Elliot leaned against the doorframe, looking down condescendingly at Sean on the hospital bed, with that signature mocking smile at the corner of his lips. "Congratulations. Although you missed our wedding, you could say you were there in body." Sean stared at him dead, on the hatred in his eyes almost spewing out. "Get out. Get the hell out of here. Don't be so worked up." Elliot swirled the wine glass in his hand. "I am here to give you a wedding gift, you know." He pulled out a document envelope from his pocket and casually tossed it onto Sean's hospital bed. "What is this?" Sean looked at the document envelope warily. "Open it and you'll find out." Elliot smiled. "Oh right, a friendly reminder. Remember to take a deep breath after you read it, or I am afraid those bones you just had set might snap again from rage." Sean trembled as he struggled to open the document envelope with those bandage-wrapped hands that were no longer nimble. Inside were only a few thin sheets of paper. It was a paternity test report. Applicant, Ariel Miller. Subject, newborn, male. Sample source, hospital retained sample, not Sean Caldwell. And on the last line of the test conclusion, it clearly stated biological father, son relationship excluded. Not only that, there were also several photos attached below. In the photos, a heavily pregnant Ariel was intimately kissing a bleached hair punk on a street corner. That punk was none other than Ariel's so-called ex-boyfriend, whom he had seen at the obstetrics department that day. How is that surprised? Didn't see that coming? Elliot's voice was like a demon's whisper. You thought you were carrying on your mentor's bloodline? Turns out she made you the sucker picking up someone else's kid. That child has nothing to do with you whatsoever. Ariel deliberately lied to you to tie down her cash cow. She never used your sperm at all, or she was already screwing around with that little punk. Poof-effed. Sean only felt a metallic sweetness surge in his throat, and a mouthful of fresh blood violently sprayed out, dyeing the white bedsheets red fake. It was all fake. For this child, he had pushed away the woman who loved him most, lost both his hands, ruined his career, only to discover in the end that all of this was nothing but a complete and utter scam. He was like a clown, jumping up and down in the web of lies Ariel had woven, ending up with nothing in the end. He roared like a wounded beast, using every ounce of strength in his body to tear that report to shreds, tears mixed with blood streaming down his face. Elliot watched his breakdown with cold eyes without a shred of pity. Can't take it anymore. He set down his empty glass. If you'd known it would come to this, why bother in the first place? Sean, you pushed Tiffany away with your own hands, and you sent yourself to hell with your own hands. Enjoy the rest of your life, you piece of trash. With that, Elliot turned and strode away, leaving behind the once invincible genius doctor, wailing alone in the abyss of despair. Outside the door, the sun was still shining brightly. But for Sean, the darkness would be endless. Autumn in Austin arrived, exceptionally gentle, without that bleak chill of New York, only the scent of hay warmed by the sun. 3 months had passed since that chaotic wedding. Elliot really did what he promised at the wedding, spoiling me into the happiest woman in Texas. Every day we'd go horseback riding, fishing, watch outdoor movies, and occasionally he'd fly to Silicon Valley for a meeting. But no matter how late, he'd always make it home to have dinner with me. With Elliot's capital injection, Joe Ranch had been renovated into the trendiest vacation destination in all of Austin. I also picked up my fashion buyer career again, but this time it wasn't to please anyone. It was to bring Texas's easygoing, free-spirited style to a broader world. As for news about Sean, it still came from New York from time to time, like some trashy soap opera. I heard that after he was discharged from the hospital, he went back to New York and tried to sue Ariel for fraud. But Ariel was no pushover either. She insisted it was a mistake by the hospital during the IVF process, and even counterattacked by claiming Sean had emotionally abused her during her pregnancy, which worsened her postpartum depression. The two tore each other apart in court, becoming the laughingstock of New York's entire elite circle. Dr. Caldwell, once hailed as the rising star of the medical world, had now become a down-and-out man with no hands, no job, and an ex-girlfriend who wouldn't stop harassing him. Rumor has it he sold that luxury apartment in the Upper East Side to pay for the massive legal fees and breach of contract penalties. Because his hands were ruined, not only could he no longer practice medicine, but he also had to compensate a private hospital he had previously signed with a huge sum of money. All of this, I just listened to it like it was some story. Until one day, I received a letter from New York. The envelope looked familiar, that expensive pearlescent paper, even though it was already a bit wrinkled, still gave off that familiar, deliberately maintained air of respectability. It was from Sean. Elliot was sitting across from me, eating breakfast. Seeing the letter in my hand, he raised an eyebrow. "What? A confession from your ex?" "No idea," I shrugged. Maybe asking to borrow money? Elliot laughed, picking up a piece of toast and stuffing it in his mouth. Open it and see. If he is asking for money, I'll send him a check. After all, I am not that petty. Consider it like shooing away a beggar. I opened the envelope. Inside was only a thin sheet of paper, the handwriting scrawled. Long gone was the composed confidence that once showed through every stroke. It was written painstakingly with those crippled hands of his. Tiffany, by the time you see this letter, I will have already left New York. I don't ask for your forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. These past 3 months, I've lived every day in regret. I often wonder, if there hadn't been that damn proposal, if I hadn't pushed you away that day, if we could have gotten married as planned, would I now be able to have your smile like Elliot does? Ariel's child isn't mine. That is the biggest irony of all. I threw away the watermelon for a lie, picked up a sesame seed only to find out that sesame seed was fake too. My hands are ruined. This is probably karma. Those hands that once pushed you away, God took them back. I heard you are doing well in Texas. That is good. I wish you happiness this time, I mean it. Sean, at the end of the letter was a dried tear stain. I looked at this letter, and my heart didn't stir much. No satisfaction of revenge fulfilled, no bittersweet ache of old feelings rekindling, only a sense of complete release, of finally letting go. It was like watching a movie that had long since ended. The ending was bittersweet, but that was all. What does it say? Elliot leaned over, resting his chin on my shoulder. Nothing. I folded the letter and casually tossed it into the fireplace nearby. Just some nonsense. The flames licked at the letter, turning it to ashes in an instant. You really don't want to know where he went? Elliot asked. Number. I turned around, wrapped my arms around his neck, and kissed him on the lips. Wherever he goes, it has got nothing to do with me anymore. There is only one thing I care about now. What? Should we have a baby? This ranch is so big. Wouldn't it be a waste not to have a few little cowboys running around on horses? Elliot's eyes lit up instantly, that familiar expression with a hint of mischief returning. As my dear wife commands, I dare not disobey. So shall we start now? Hey, it is still broad daylight. In Texas we call this plenty of sunshine, good for growth. He scooped me up in his arms and strode into the house, accompanied by Joe's hearty laughter and the ranch hand's whistles. Sunlight poured through the floor, to ceiling windows filling the entire room with warmth and brightness. This was my new life. No shadows, no betrayal, just love overflowing to the brim and a future full of endless possibilities. As for Sean, who is that? I forgot a long time ago.